first to respond and the last to recover from crisis, whether disasters, public health emergencies, conflicts, or other disruptions. If you ask me, it is this crucial to support communities to act before a crisis hits by investing in resilient local systems, supporting inclusive local governance, and building on local capacities, relationships, and knowledge. In this current context of unstable humanitarian funding, strengthening community preparedness could be one of our most effective safeguards. And therefore, today, we'll explore what community preparedness actually means and how we can support it as humanitarian and development actors in ways that are proactive, community-led, and sustainable. So we will start today with some amazing panelists who will share their expertise with us today. I will introduce them in a bit, and we will follow this by a Q&A between us and the panelists. And after this, we will go into breakout groups where we will work on specific questions and concrete actions. So really bridging this theory with actual practice. We will tell you a bit more about these breakout groups, including, of course, the questions that you will work on in these groups, just before we will bring you into these breakout rooms. Before I'll introduce the speakers, I would like to share my screen, so bear with me for one moment. And Corina and Annie, can you confirm you can see my screen?
We can, Britt.
Perfect. So there is a QR code, and my colleague Annie will also put the link in the chat. This is a link to a Mentimeter, just two questions, two very small questions, but it would be very nice for us to know what you already know, what you already think about community preparedness, what are the assumptions, and what do you want to get out of today, basically. So if you could please either grab your phone and scan the QR code or click on the link in the chat, that would be amazing. And I think in a second also, Eleni will share her screen and showing us some answers that you will be providing.
Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. So I see, what does community preparedness mean to you? Oh. So yeah, strengthening social structures, locally led response, resilience to disasters if they occur. We should provide comprehensive information to communities that help to provide support to the team regarding effective implementation of the project. Communities are aware of the risks and that they are prepared to respond, the ability to cope with shocks, the ability to deal with crisis, having the tools and resources to be able to act, communities in charge of their risks, to take lead to resolve their issues. Great. So I see really indeed community led, the crisis going in, the resources, the readiness to respond to a situation or event. Amazing. We'll go to the next question. So what questions would you like the panelists to address today? Of course, as mentioned, we will have a Q&A. So if you don't know yet, that's perfectly fine. I'm 100% sure you will have some questions and ideas after the panelists presented their very interesting presentations. Maybe later, great. But if there's already something that you would really like the panelists to touch upon already, please feel free to mention that here and they will take note of it. how not to overburden communities, how to prepare when hardship is already there, climate change response, what are best practices, how to mobilize communities to prepare for disasters. What do you think about anticipatory action for communities? What resources or training does the community need most right now? Very good questions already. How to bring localization into practice? Is there potential for AI? Learnings to speed up operation? How can we ensure that community preparedness strategies are generally community-led rather than NGO-driven? Great question. How to strengthen community participation in preparedness? How this relates to DRR? I think Jaap will also touch upon that. How can we tell community is prepared or not? Amazing. What's the role of technology and innovation? How do we balance donor requirements with realities? What do you see as the biggest gaps? How do you make it real? I see in the chat also proactive digitalization. Great. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. The speakers took note of that. And if there's not answered during the presentations, feel free to ask them during the Q&A. So I will exactly. Please keep asking your questions here in the chat. So I will share my screen again. And I will try to go to the next page. So I would like to introduce to you the speakers of today. First, we have Jaap Fuik, who is lecturer, researcher at the International Development Studies at Van Hal Ladenstein University of Applied Sciences. We have Grace Wani, Executive Director of AidLink in South Sudan. And we have Mine Aguzanda, Executive Director of the Leiden Center for Development in the Philippines. Very, very great. Jaap will touch a bit about the theory, and Grace and Mine will touch about their real life experiences that they already have for working for years on community preparedness in South Sudan and in the Philippines. So I think they are really great panelists for today. So we have 10 minutes per speaker. They will present, and then afterwards, as mentioned, we will do the Q&A. So if you have any questions during the presentation of the speakers, please put them in the chat or hold them in a bit longer. And then, of course, after the presentations, we'll have sufficient time for to answer all your questions. So, yes, Jaap, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to you. I will stop sharing and try to share your PowerPoints.
Thank you very much, Britt. And in the meantime, I will just take the time to introduce myself a little bit. By the way,
Amazing.
thank you for mentioning that I have 10 minutes. First, it was 8 minutes, so that's a lot more. Thank you. My students say that I'm notorious for using too much time, so I'm setting a time. Don't worry. Yeah. So thanks a lot. So yes, my name is Jaap Fuik. I work with Van Hal Ladenstein University. And before that, I worked for about 15 years in the humanitarian sector as well as in the development sector. And it's amazing to see already quite a number of familiar names within the participants list. So that's very nice. Maybe we can catch up a little bit and exchange thoughts in the breakout rooms. Yeah, so as I said, about 15 years experience in the humanitarian sector and about 8 years in DRA programs, Dutch Relief Alliance program since 2015. I mentioned some of the countries there. For the Dutch Relief Alliance, I worked in Iraq and South Sudan, and I started out in Afghanistan and did a lot of visits, but also longer stays in some other countries as well. So I'm very interested in hearing all your ideas in the breakout rooms, but I have the privilege of giving you a little bit of background, also a little bit of history on community preparedness and also the broader framework around that. Britt, yes, thank you very much. What I want to start with is to take you to the 1980s, to the Philippines, actually. And not only the Philippines, but also other countries in South Asia, Bangladesh, and South America. I'm giving you this background to also share and talk about that community preparedness is something that is not new. It has been practiced for decades. And we are going to look at some examples. Well, in the 1980s, there were quite a lot of armed conflicts in this region. For example, in the Philippines under the dictator Marcos. At the same time, there were a lot of natural hazards and disasters occurring, and the government fell short. To fill the gap in disaster response, but also especially in mitigation, prevention, and preparedness, civil society groups filled that gap. They jumped into this gap. Yeah, Britt, you can just slowly bring up the different things. Yeah, it will go along with my story. So the CSOs, civil society organizations like churches, farmers organizations, they started to join hands and to organize themselves in order to address causes of disasters, help communities in need that needed responses, and provide life-saving assistance. Now, for example, in Indonesia, this was successful and resulted in movement building, also in other countries, but I use Indonesia and the Philippines as the example. These civil society organizations, they grew into NGOs and they built a lot of networks. Now, this is something to keep in mind if we are talking about community preparedness, building the networks. And at one point, the National Disaster Management Authority in Indonesia, they started to realize, okay, wait, these organizations are very effective. They are actually taking over some of our roles. And they started to recognize their activities and their mandates and started to work together. Britt, you can just move on with the different PowerPoint aspects. Yes. So the civil society organizations and the newly formed NGOs, especially local NGOs, they realized, okay, well, the response is not enough. And we need a shift from talking about natural disasters to a discussion about why is this actually happening. And the organizations and also academia started to talk about natural hazards that come together with vulnerability, and that can result in a disaster. Yeah. So there was a shift in thinking and focusing on the hazard, on the external event, on the outside event as something that you cannot influence towards vulnerability. Why are people living in these dangerous locations? Why do people have a lack of capacities, of assets, of resources? Why are communities located in this floodplain, and so on? And organizations started to address those root causes, and especially by lobbying with higher government levels. Now, some of the key characteristics is that those organizations started to network beyond their communities, so on higher levels. In Indonesia, for example, on barangay level, and on provincial level, and in the end, even at national level. But they also created networks beyond disaster management. For example, networks related to health and agriculture. Yeah, you can pull up everything in the slide, Britt. That's completely fine. Now, I am sharing this because if you're talking about community preparedness, you can put this in the wider frame of community-based disaster risk management, which is wider and more encompassing than only preparedness. This is related to life-saving assistance, recovery, adaptation, mitigation, especially related to climate change, disaster risk reduction, and anticipatory action. And there is an overlap, of course, with anticipatory action. Now, a key objective of community-based disaster risk management is resilience building. And I will come back to resilience building, because I think if we are talking about community preparedness, we can look at it as a key component of resilience building. And what does resilience actually mean in our framework, in our mandate, in how do we operationalize this, for example, also within the DRA? And I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about it. There are platforms, agreements, and frameworks for this on international level, especially the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, which is agreed on globally, and several other organizations that you can see here. If you can go to the next slide. Great, thank you. Yes. Here we can see the relationship between those different aspects and phases, if you will. Now, there was a whole session focused on anticipatory action 2 weeks ago, so I will not go into this, but here you can see the relationships. Can you go to the next slide, please? And you can show everything that is displayed here. Yeah. Then, since we are talking about community preparedness, it's key to think about the community itself as being a very active entity with a lot of agency, a lot of resources already in place, a lot of coping mechanisms that communities already employ for a long time. And it's key to put this at the center, to put community capacities, priorities, experiences, and knowledge at the center. Yeah. To me, a key question also for you is, if we are talking about the community, is our preparedness, is our response, is that at village level? Is that, or should that maybe be at watershed level or floodplain level? What do we mean with community? But the most important point for me would be here to take the community perspective on the situation, on causes, on root causes of disasters as a key point, but especially also the priorities and the viewpoints. And then also the question, whose knowledge counts within that community? There's also a lot of diversity in the community itself. Now, on the right side, you see a table, and that gives a bit of an overview of the tension between different actors and how they look at the community. I will take out one example because of the time. For example, how do you look? What is your focus? That is the second green box. Do you look at community-based preparedness or risk management from a hazards perspective, and do you want to restore normality? This is usually a government NGO point of view, or are you looking from a community perspective, from a livelihood perspective, and addressing sustainable livelihoods, for example? Okay, thank you, Britt. Can you go to the next slide? And you can display everything that's here. Yeah. To round off, I'd like to point out that there's a lot of toolboxes and frameworks available that give us ingredients, so to say, or components of community preparedness or community resilience. Now, this is a toolbox prepared by John Twigg. It will give you 53 community preparedness criteria. And what you see here is the whole framework, but this is only like the tip of the iceberg. On the bottom, point 5, you see disaster preparedness and response. And I only took out the first point, organizational capacities and coordination. And a framework like this or a toolbox like this will give you all kinds of criteria. What is actually needed for disaster preparedness, but also for the enabling environment. Now, we don't have time, unfortunately, to go into this and to go into the details, but I just want to point out that there is a range of toolboxes available that give a lot of indicators and give a lot of qualitative, let's say, tools for us as organizations to work on what preparedness is. Well, Tirfund also has a toolbox like this, and the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center as well. So yes, this is what I want to close off with. Britt, you can just skip the last slide. It's not necessary because of the time. So thank you very much for your time. I hope this kind of a background is helpful for the discussion. And I'm really looking forward now to the practical examples and insights from our NGO colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jaap. Yes, we will go to Grace, who will talk about her experience in South Sudan. Grace, are you ready?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you, Britt. Thank you, everyone. And yes, as I share my slides, I will keep talking. Oh, you already shared. Thank you so much for that, Britt. Okay, as already introduced by Britt, I am Hidden Grace Wani, Executive Director for Aid Leading Organization. It's a women-led organization in South Sudan. I personally have up to 18 years of experience working in the humanitarian sector, development and emergency. With DRA, I have the experience of 2 years working with DRA in the South Sudan Joint Response. And yes, basically, my work all these years is referring to coordinating, linking, and collaboration with the communities. So I would like quickly to take us through a quick background of the hazards or disasters that happen in South Sudan. And I would like to first to understand the keyword community preparedness. What do we understand? To me, I look at 3 things. It's all about ensuring the community is informed and it's aware of what is going to happen, and they know how to respond, yeah, or to act when it happens, yeah. So briefly, I would like to, you can see from the slide, it's indicated clearly that floods are not new, or droughts or hazards are not new in South Sudan. Since the 1960, 1984, there are cases of floods and droughts in South Sudan. However, when it came to the recent days, from the 2019, 2017, where the drought seen in the site of eastern states of South Sudan, and then from 23 up to today, there are issues to do with heat wave, which even normally distract learning of children in school. And the issues of the flood intensified and escalated more than what people anticipated. And this is why it's very important for us to talk about community preparedness and how we can engage the communities and local capacity around. We can go to the next slide. Okay, basically the areas where these floods are commonly happening in Jonglei State in South Sudan, Unity State, Upper Nile, and some part of Central Equatoria, which are along the Nile. Yeah. So the best question and the thinking question that I have for all of us is, I feel we should be flashing back and answer this question of like what mechanism should be considered by the humanitarian organization in strengthening local capacity for sustainable disaster preparedness and response, not only in South Sudan, but this can apply anywhere where you're working right now. Next. So I think the slide is looking a little bit congested and it's very small, but I think we can go through. And I just want quickly to bring us to know what the community is already doing in South Sudan. How is the community responding or preparing themselves for such floods that they're seeing? Currently, at the community level, there is a lot of sharing of early warning communications on floods, locations, and when floods are happening. Also at the community level, because since they know that floods have been existing long time ago, they are aware in the community and identifying these highlands where if this season they know that there is a flood or rains will be a lot and there will be water, where should the families go? So this is already something which is happening. Communication by local authorities and the government informing people and that there are anticipated floods from this period to this period. This is already part of the community preparedness and engagement at the local level. And then also engaging youth in information dissemination when it comes to issues of flood or any other hazard that is happening within South Sudan. And youth are very good when it comes to passing information or sharing information within the community. They are very fast. Yeah. And then we also have construction of dikes. Previously, they used to construct drainage around their tukuls because that is where they feel they want to prevent. But these days, because of a lot of support from organizations maybe, and they try to modernize the drainage system a little bit by digging dikes. And these dikes are normally done within their community, within health centers and schools. And then also they, in some locations, they ensure digging roads that link children to schools or even the community members to health centers, because this is where the community need most to reach when the need comes. And then also we've introduced, many organizations are doing it, and particularly in my organization, we are also doing this. We are encouraging tree planting to avoid issues. And this is looking at tree planting in school and health centers, family level. So this is what we're doing currently and what the community in South Sudan is doing. Construction of ponds in some locations for collecting rainwater. This is where rains are scarce or they have one season that comes and it is that prolonged kind of whatever. And then we have the construction of planting of quick maturing crops, and then also flood-resistant crops like rice, and then some of the trees, planting them like those ones which are drought-resistant. They can continue growing even if there's no much water, which is needed. And then also looking at the aspect of ensuring they do preservation of whatever they have harvested. So the other response mechanism that they do is when this comes, they relocate to the higher land, and then they are normally this seasonal relocation or migration by the pastoralists and some of the farmers, and then harvesting and preservation, and then giving updates by local authorities on flood and sharing of foods. This is what the community at the community level do. Next.
Final minute warning also, Grace.
Yes, thank you. So now we are looking at local capacity. We have presence of community and their acceptance to participate when there are hazards. We have local NGOs and CPOs who are in the hard-to-reach areas, and they are capable of doing all this. We have private sectors present, which can be private companies, government companies, or individual companies. We have government and local authorities who are capable of coming up with policies like environmental policies, inclusive education policies, partnership opportunities, and implementation. However, these local capacity, there are gaps in. They are not fully enveloped in the preparation by the humanitarian actors who are already present. They are normally, the planning is mostly done at the humanitarian level, and with the limited engagement of the community level local capacity. So the limitation include the funding, and then the trust or risk transfer gap, and then the use of imported materials or resources, imported response mechanism instead of building on the local ones, and then top-down planning instead of bottom-up project designs, limited partnership with private sector, and lack of community level preparedness plan. So these are some of the gaps that I see. If it is taken into consideration, it can really boost up. The next, I think, should be the final. Yes, I also highlighted some few responses by the humanitarian organization, and the humanitarian organizations are doing a lot at their level in terms of preparedness programming from the UN international organization. And then also in terms of response, they are also trying to do a lot in terms of food aid, protection, NFIs, and health. So basically, this is what the humanitarian organizations are doing. In conclusion, what I can say is for sustainable community preparedness in South Sudan or wherever we are, it is very important to build and strengthen local capacity in terms of response or preparedness to flood. Thank you so much. That is all from my side. I don't know, Britt, if I'm within the time frame.
It's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Grace. Really great. Really interesting. Now I would like to give the floor to Mine. I will try to also present her slides. There is a very big storm in the Philippines at the moment, so I hope you are here with us.
Yes, I am here still, Brit. Still
Amazing.
holding on. Our internet is still holding on. I'm sorry, about 6 hours ago, we were hit by a strong storm, the third in 1 month in November. Okay, so please let me start. I'm Minette Aguisando, Jerusalem. I've been in humanitarian and development work for 45 years. I started when I was 20, and I never changed course, so I might convey my age, which is 65. So I'm proud to be having been in this kind of job. So please allow me to share my experience in community preparedness. So for us working on the ground in the Philippines, community organizing is very important. For us, it is the lifeblood of community preparedness. Nothing can be prepared without a sturdy organization in the community. So a community organization is also the key to sustainability, because we in the NGOs, in the CSOs won't be there forever. At some point in time, we will pull out. So it's the community organization that is going to pursue the policies, the programs that is initiated by the NGO like us. So for example, there are food security initiatives so that the people can have extra income. And then the community is able to organize communal farms. By the way, our NGO, the Latest Center for Development, we are a local NGO focusing on DRR, disaster risk reduction, and with special focus on women, on poor women in the rural areas. And we've been doing this for 36 years. And then, so when you get a strong organization, whether it is a peasant organization or a women's organization or even a fisherfolk or youth organization, this results in lessening the job of us external responders. For example, in anticipatory action or in response, our job is lessened because the community becomes the first responder when they are capacitated and when they are prepared. And we have case studies to prove this, that poor communities lacking in education and literacy, if capacitated, can be enabled to be responders. Another importance of community organizing or building a community organization is that we can get into the mechanisms of government, like helping government craft their development plans, like 2 years or 3 years development plans. And by capacitating and having a full-blown community organization, we are able to initiate survivor-led response. Actually, that's the essence of DRR. The survivors themselves being able to take the lead in responding to the situation of, in our context, it's either natural disasters like typhoons, floods, or armed conflict, like in the region where I am now in Samar Leyte, facing the Pacific Ocean. We are also a high conflict area between the rebels and government troops. So we respond to both kinds of disaster. And we are also advocates of localization of aid, because when you strengthen community and grassroots organization, we're trying to struggle to assert for localization of aid. And with strong organizations on the ground, our work from disaster preparedness to anticipatory action to response to livelihood, rehabilitation, this addresses everything. No, from the start. So let me go to the second slide. Maybe you want to ask, so what do we do? How do we organize an association in the community? First and foremost is capacity building. We have trainings, we have modules designed to for example, on community organizing, leadership, women's rights awareness, and of course, disaster risk reduction. These are ladderized trainings and attuned to the needs of the communities, because in some communities, they have low literacy, so we have to put more visuals, more pictures to fill in the gap for their literacy. And at the same time, we have simultaneous also, if we can manage adult literacy programs. And then we also support food security projects for the community, because we believe that a community that is more food secure is better prepared to mitigate the impacts of whatever disaster, whether natural or human-induced. We also organize the youth, because the youth are the future, through youth camps, and make them aware about the importance of organizing and the climate crisis. And one important thing for building a sturdy organization is to teach the community people planning and assessment. Very simple tools. We will not make it complicated like what we do in our NGOs. We try to devise simple planning and assessment tools in order to consolidate the organization and eventually expand. Okay, next slide, please. So I would go on to the challenges. I would like to share not only our achievements, but also where we failed and how we are trying to remedy our failures. So our challenges and weaknesses in the past more than 30 years are, of course, lack of government support, the armed conflict raging in the countrysides, affecting livelihood and people's education, lack of resources, especially now inflation is at an all-time high in the Philippines and I guess in other countries as well. And of course, it's also important that's why we have capacity building, to try to change people's behavior and attitude to be more selfless instead of selfish. It's very difficult. Like for women, we have to teach them about their rights and not have the idea of relegating them to the house, to household chores. So that's trying to change the feudal culture that treats women as second-class citizens. And then lastly is there's political persecution ongoing in my country now, in the Philippines. We in the CSOs, in the NGO leaders, we're getting red tag, we're being politically persecuted through many means, judicial attacks, we're being filed cases in court. Like me now, I have a case in court, we're being detained, disappeared, or even murdered. So that's, if you might ask me how we are trying to do, what remedy are we doing, is that we launch campaigns on human rights education. We lobby with our government officials to so that they will understand that what we're doing is supporting people and not creating chaos. With regards to the change of behavior and attitude in the communities, that's what we do for capacity building. We try to address, like our first speaker said, Jap, that we try to address the root causes of why people are vulnerable, why people are kept poor for so many decades. Since the Spanish colonized us in the 1600s, we've been kept poor and not liberated. Our minds are not liberated because of the education system. So we all tackle this in our trainings and capacity building. Okay, last slide, please. To end, I would like to say that it's important to invest in community preparedness, because in the event of a disaster, it's your neighbor who will be the first one to help. No, so we've got to invest in that. And we believe that grassroots organizations are the base of a social movement, of a people's movement that's going to give direction to social change and better lives for the people. So yeah, so that's my take, and I hope I was able to understand to answer the questions of the participants earlier. What are the best practices, and about anticipatory action? As I said, anticipatory action is lessened if the community is prepared through building a strong community organization. Learnings to speed up operations. My answer would still be a strong community organizations. It's going to speed up operations from anticipatory action to response. Yes, so so I hope. And then, what's the relation to DRR? There's a question. So my take is the relationship of community preparedness to DRR is so important, because community preparedness through building strong community organizations ensures better disaster risk reduction methods and programs. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Really interesting again. Well, thank you again for all the three speakers of today. I think the presentations were very insightful. So thank you once again for your time and for sharing with us your expertise and your knowledge. I would like to open the floor for any questions. We are with a lot of people today, so I hope that we can answer most of your questions. I will also ask the speakers if they could also take a look into perhaps the chat now or at a later moment to help us answer as many questions as we can. I want to first start with a few questions in the chat, because I see a few questions in the chat. Corinne, she promised to support me with moderating, looking at the chat. So Corinne, are there a few questions that you think would be good to answer?
Well, there are many, so it's good to see people already raising their questions, and please continue to do so. Maybe a first one, and I think that Minette addressed it a bit, but it's nice to go a bit further into it. Perhaps Hunde has asked a question about focusing not just on natural phenomena, but also indeed social and conflicts. Perhaps Hunde wants to unmute themselves and ask the question. They are able to.
Hello, would you repeat the?
Yeah.
I missed some of the. Yeah.
It's just that we saw your
Sunday.
question in the chat, and we were wondering if you would like to pose it yourself to the speakers. And please feel
Yes,
free to introduce yourself.
Right. My name is Hunde, working for Hunde Oromo Grassroots Development Initiative, which is a national NGO, a local national NGO, of course. Therefore, when everyone talks about the community preparedness, the natural phenomena are taken into consideration majorly. However, there are lots of factors actually which are not natural, as well as some are actually not some kind of tangible, but yet they affect the resilience of a community. Therefore, how about considering those things into the aspects of community preparedness? If my question is clear, I don't know. That's my point. Of course, it may not be solely a question. It may also be just an idea to consider in thinking about the community preparedness.
I think it is a very valid question and something to reflect on, indeed. Shall I go to another question, Britt?
Yes, let's gather two more questions, and then with three we go to the panelists.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going a bit from top to bottom. Crystal also posed a question to Grace. Crystal, would you mind unmuting yourself and posing the question and introducing yourself?
Yes,
Crystal of the
thank you.
Dutch Relief Alliance.
Good morning. My name is Crystal, and I'm the chair of the Dutch Relief Alliance. Thank you so much to all the speakers. It was really insightful and inspiring. And a question to Grace, but also maybe to Minette, because I was wondering if you also see communities basically joining forces across districts or provinces to really scale up and to pool resources, to learn from each other's warning systems. Like, do you see informal networks taking shape? Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Thank you,
Yes,
Crystal.
can I
Very good
answer?
question. Should we first take one more question, Minette? Is that okay for you?
Okay.
So that we collect a
Okay.
couple of them.
Yeah, I think
We have a question of Sahabia, doctor of HAI. Would you mind unmuting yourself and raising? You actually have three questions, but I think they're we can consider them as one. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, it was for like three different people. All the three panelists, I had a question each, but I'll just say it. You guys can choose. For Jap, I had this question that like, whose responsibility should community preparedness be on? Like, is it the people, the government, the NGOs? Because sometimes none of them take it, sometimes all of them do, or one of them do. I was wondering about that. For Grace, I wanted to ask her that when you said root causes to the disasters that happen, what did you mean? Because natural causes and climate change tends to be like this overarching explanation for most things that are happening in this framework. And for Minette, you mentioned food security projects. So I was wondering what it was about. And like, is it like organic farming? Are you trying to get them away from monoculture that Green Revolution did? Or how, like, what is it? That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. These are really excellent questions, and one for each of the panelists indeed. Britt, shall I go back over to you?
Yes, please. Who would like from the panelists to start with answering one or a few of the questions?
I think I would like to start by answering the question of Christelle. Is that, yeah, so yes, we do have networks. We have a people-to-people exchange where like a farmers organization can go on an exposure trip to another area, another community where they learn, they observe organic farming and other methods. Or for example, one farmers association who has a cooperative that's successful lends some rice to another peasant association so that they can start up also their own cooperative. They loan some rise so that the cooperative movement can gain. So it's small steps, but when you count the number of organizations that are joining, these are poor farmers, poor women associations, they're growing in numbers, and they can make an impact when you count already hundreds in a province. Like in one province, we already have more than 100 women's associations. With no offense to the men, the women are faster to organize when they know about their rights, when they learn about their rights. It's easier. I always say it spreads like wildfire. Yes, thank you, Chris.
Amazing.
Okay, can I say something?
For sure. Please go ahead, Grace.
Yes, I respond to Crystal. Honestly, the question in regard to community pooling resources, this is already something which is happening in South Sudan, I can say, in terms of the human resource. At the community level, when we go to these locations which have much issues to do with this hazard, they are normally grouping. For example, if there is a location or a school or any area that they feel a lot of flood is happening there, they normally group themselves, they go there and they do the work, they dig the dike, yeah, in groups, and then also they go to another one. However, also, I think at organization level or humanitarian level, there are organizations who are already engaging the community and the local authorities in identifying possible local resources that they can use in preparing or in engaging or in acting towards preventing this hazard. So what I can say here, the answer I can say here is yes, these are ongoing already, but we need more. We need to strengthen. We need to continue. We need to identify more of them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Yap, maybe could you answer the question about whose responsibility is actually community preparedness?
Yes, I was thinking about it very hard. It's a very good question. So thank you for that. Well, and it has a lot of different ways to look at it. So, for example, what is usually discussed is that the state is let's say, the primary duty bearer. Also, the state has a legal obligation to engage in disaster risk reduction, to protect its people. However, as we know, there's often gaps. Now, I think responsibilities is, let's say, co-shared, or there's a co-responsibility of communities and even households. You could say as right holders, but not the main duty bearers. Yeah, so they can, they have a lot of ownership of their own communities, of their own landscapes, and so they can contribute a lot in terms of knowledge and organizing structures to engage in community preparedness. And then there is also a part of the responsibility as part of the civil society and, if you will, NGO community. Now, to me, what is key to, let's say, community-based disaster risk management is that you engage in a process on these different levels to agree, or to at least open up the discussion on who is doing what in this respect. Yeah. So, for example, in Indonesia, this has been arranged with the National Disaster Management Authority in a very different way than in Bangladesh, for example. So it also, it really depends on the different levels and how you coordinate this as at these different levels with these different actors. But in the end, I do view the state as a primary duty bearer, so to say.
Thanks. And there was the question on the fact that we talked a lot today about climate and community preparedness related to climate change and climate disasters. How do you see community preparedness with other disasters? Yeah, whoever wants to respond to that.
Yeah, if I can jump in here, I think it's also a valid question. I do think we mentioned armed conflict aspects as well, and our colleague from the Philippines also mentioned it. There's a lot of tension, political oppression, persecution, but also armed conflict in many parts of the country. But I agree with the statement. Um, so it's not only about natural hazards, but it's also about conflict. But you could also think about other dimensions, for example, crime, yeah, organized crime, which can be a huge factor if you think about Haiti, for example. But there's also other hazards that might be a bit further away from the humanitarian sector. But if you think about industrial or chemical or logistical risks, there can also be a lot of vulnerabilities there from people. So yeah, I totally agree with the statement. Yeah, it should be it's about the different forms of risk.
Thanks. Corinne, I think we can do one more round, and that's unfortunately looking at the timing, that's it. Do you have a final question? And I will also like to ask the room for one more question. Just raise your hand if you have a question.
Britt, I would just like to address the question of Dr. Sahabia. She asked on root causes, what does this mean, and food security. So in our organization, we do identify the root causes of people's vulnerabilities, which is actually poverty. I always say that we are in the same storm, but in different boats. Of course, the rich have the bigger boats. So we're working to have a society where everyone can be on the same boat. So that's the root cause of the vulnerabilities. The storms affect us in different ways depending on where we are in society. Yes, thank you. And for food security, we have communal farms, we have projects that we engage with the government, we can access funds, and many other livelihood. Yes,
Amazing.
thank you.
Thanks. Corinne, a final question from the chat.
Yeah, we had a question from Anton still, who asked, I think when Grace was presenting, a question about trust. Anton, would you like to pose the question yourself?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute. Thank you. Yeah, it was just a very short state. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. So there was in Grace's presentation a very short, maybe because the time was limited, a mentioning on the trust and risk issue, and I was wondering if she could expand a little bit on that, what she means with that in the context of community preparedness. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, Anton. Over to you, Grace.
Yes, and is there someone from before Grace, before you can answer that question? Is there any question still burning? If yes, please raise your hand. We will have space for one or two more questions. So raise your hand if you have a burning question. You don't have to be shy. If not a burning question, then Grace, go ahead. And then if there still is during the answer of Grace, just raise your hand. Grace, go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much for the one who asked the question. Yes, I talked about the issues of trust and risk transfer. This is basically about the community preparedness planning. You know, sometimes the lack of trust from the humanitarian side is raising questions or like the fear of risk taking. It's making them not to envelop the local capacity fully from preparation to implementation, from preparation to even implementation. Because you find that when you don't trust someone, it is very hard for you to involve the person in your planning. And it's always done in a way that the planning is done at the top level, and then you just go and present what you have planned, how you want it to look like. So it's like the community is more of a receiver, yeah? Receives what is already ready instead of participating. That is why it's an issue to do with trust. That means you don't trust the community, you don't trust the local capacity. I hope this makes it clear from my side. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry, I think mine was just like a continuation of what just Grace said. So I wanted to kind of ask my question, if that's okay.
Yes, sure. And then let's finish with Willem's question, and then we will, and I see Jaap's hand also up, and then we will do a short break. Go ahead.
Now my
Yeah,
question
no,
is,
I just, pardon me. Yeah, please go on.
okay, my question is about now Philippines and Indonesia. There was a big hurricane 2 weeks ago, but there was no call for support from the government of Philippines. So we got all the impression that Philippines are well prepared, had good preparedness plans, and that they have enough funds to resolve the damage. But is that true, or is it a lack of interest, or what was the reason? Because if you compare to Indonesia, there were no NGOs invited, but there you had the Ministry of Disasters, the BNPB, who actually did a very good job. But how is the situation in the Philippines?
Good question, Willem. And Zabia, you had a follow-up question as well?
Yeah, it was that I was just asking from the previous one where she said that there's not a lot of trust on the communities. I wanted to talk about humanitarian aid architecture, like isn't it like top down in nature, and then communities just become receivers instead of active participants? Does that not reduce their community preparedness and the capacity to respond to disaster?
Thanks. Minette, do you want to answer Willem's question?
Yes, thank you, Wim. That's very true. The Philippine government didn't ask for support because it's kind of chaotic now in the Philippines because of the corruption issues in the government reaching the highest level, even up until the president. Congressmen, senators are involved in the anomalous flood control project. Many government agencies are involved. So there's a crisis now in the Philippines, a crisis of leadership. And many people died. That's true. Two strong typhoons hit us hard in November 3 and November 8. And it's because of also the lack of preparedness of the government and the ghost flood control projects, which is a big issue now. It just goes to show that they're not really serious with disaster preparedness because the money is all going to corruption and ghost projects. Can you imagine hundreds of people dead because of flooding, flash floods? So that's why they're busy now trying to cover up their mess, and they're not having appeals to the international community because they're so embroiled in these issues. And we are here. Our stand is stand with the people, stand against corruption. And I'm happy to say that we are part of the people's movement against corruption. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Willem.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Jaap, final words.
Yeah, just briefly, I saw some questions about what are root causes and aren't these natural causes and climate change generally. I just want to quickly respond to that. Of course, yes, climate change and natural hazards are causes. However, there's also a lot of other root causes related to politics and economics, for example, lack of governance, marginalization of groups, lack of water management, all these things, social injustice, marginalization that are already there, also completely separate from climate change. Yeah? And then climate change is an additional factor and also an amplifier. But it's not only climate change, it's not only natural disasters, but a lot of underlying deep root causes that in the end contribute a lot to vulnerability. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now I want to invite every breakout group, the note or the presenter of each breakout group to say just 2 or 3 key actions or insights that you discussed. Very shortly, just 1 minute, basically, because we have just 10 minutes left until the end of this interesting session. So, breakout group 1, the biggest obstacles to community preparedness and what could help overcome them. Who can unmute yourself if you are the presenter?
Yes, that would be me. Sorry, I was looking for the right button. Yes, a lot of interesting insights from Sudan and Somalia. Main points, I would say the communities will have to identify their own capacities themselves. I found that a very good one. Intersectionality is a very important one, meaning taking into account the priorities and needs, but also capacities of the different groups. And focusing on the strong social life that is very often present still if many other things are not there in terms of sharing and helping one another. Yeah, that's it.
Very interesting. Thanks. Breakout group 2. What does it mean when you focus on capacities instead of hazards and risks? What are the local capacities that can be strengthened?
I have to admit, I forgot to set a presenter for our second breakout group. However, everyone introduced really nice insights, and I thought maybe one that recapped a lot of it as well in the breakout group was Hunda. So maybe if Hunda, you'd like to take the floor and introduce what we spoke about, because I feel like your introduction of what you did as well was quite all-encompassing, if that's possible. Or otherwise, Ashraf also was quite all-encompassing as well in the introduction. Or I can also do, it's okay, I can do the recap. What was mentioned a lot was each individual's NGO, what people were doing, which took a view on really reestablishing how intertwined the different aspects come together when the hazards happen, whether they are natural hazards, but also man-made hazards that become natural hazards, for communities to also take that, not responsibility, but the agency to be able to respond. But a point that was raised as well is that there are different governance in communities and different approaches as well that all need to be taken into account. And with the accumulation of also different hazards that are coming in, it is complicated to take the capacities into account. Also because, as mentioned, some individuals aren't necessarily aware that they have the capacities, and some communities aren't aware that they have these capacities until it happens and until they're faced with the issue and in first response know what to do. So it's all a power play of trying to really raise awareness, but at the same time, awareness isn't sufficient, and conversations are also needed amongst different levels of communities and individuals. So very interesting conversation overall.
Great. Good to hear. Breakout group 3. What actors can be meaningfully involved more? Who are actually the key actors? Who would be the presenter of breakout group 3?
Willem, can I? Yeah, you're still muted.
Yeah, breakout group 3. Of course, we talked about now the government has a role to play, but an interesting factor is some countries don't have a government, a strong government, or the responsible department has no funds to do it. So in some countries, for instance, Afghanistan, they see a big role for volunteers. So volunteers who can, who have a good knowledge, who can be really involve, motivate populations to build capacity of the population of the villages. Also, youth groups can be used. And interesting remark was as well, young people give a new view on how to organize things, how to motivate the people, how to change or modify an intervention.
Interesting.
The young people, they have a passion and they have the hope for change. So that was actually the main conclusion. Other groups which can play roles are religious groups in places like Afghanistan. The religious people can be, let's say, a good communicator between the government and the populations, and they can translate and explain and motivate the people for change.
Well, that
Yeah,
sounds
that's
good.
actually the most
Yeah.
important conclusions. Yes.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Breakout group 4, what does preparedness look like in humanitarian settings? And how can we ensure they are community-led without placing an unrealistic burden on the communities?
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up as soon as possible. Thank you for your points, and I hope I don't miss any. It was mentioned that like preparation looks different in different places. Like in Netherlands, it would be getting an emergency package together because of the war in Russia and Ukraine. And it was also mentioned that risks are different in different places and like disasters look different. So they need to know what all can happen and also how much of it is real and fake. So the burden of understanding if the news is real or fake, there should be a proper channel that people can trust. And assessments are also different for different kind of people. If you have a medical emergency or like if you have diabetes, for example, your biggest priority in preparation will be your medicines and not even food. So that looks different for everyone. And another thing was how community preparedness, you need to ask the community what their history is, what they usually face, and what are the solutions that they usually end up taking. And then maybe as humanitarian actors, we can see how to strengthen their initiatives. Yeah.
Great. Breakout group 5, what is community-led versus locally led? What are differences and what is overlap?
Yes, so we discussed indeed a bit about the understanding of what is locally led and what is community led, and there were quite some different understandings in that as well. In the sense that whereas one said locally led is more like really the local community, and community can be broader than that. So you can be either displaced or be part of the diaspora, but still be part of the community, whereas a different understanding can also be like local can be more like institutions, governments, local NGOs, etc. Whereas community is more wider, but it's both still at a local level. And some communities, some questions or like thoughts were raised as well in the sense of like who is community in the sense as well when there's conflict, like what does community look like then, like who's in, who's out, and then also the whole understanding of like the humanitarian imperative as well, like where there's maybe more with NGOs, like the whole humanitarian imperative of neutrality. So there was a bit of discussion where like, okay, what does it mean actually? And also the importance, I think that it reflected in that sense was to really explain ourselves when we talk about these terms of locally led and community led responses. Like, what do we mean with that specifically? Because apparently we don't all understand the same thing with what it means. So to explain ourselves when we use those terms, that's in a nutshell what we discussed.
Very interesting. And that's also why we have the question, of course. It's not easy to answer. The last breakout group. What do we as humanitarian actors already do? And how can we utilize the local existing networks, knowledge, and capacities more?
Yes, thank you. So we discussed what humanitarian actors are already doing. We said humanitarian actors are already engaging in contingency planning, early warning systems, prepositioning. But we also agree that local communities still remain insufficiently included in coordinating spaces and clusters. These spaces are still mostly occupied by INGOs, but there is progress, there is hope. We discussed that what we need is more local coordinators, not national or INGO coordinators in these spaces. We also talked a bit about the second question about what concrete actions can be taken, and we had We had Anton in the room. I don't want to spoil his closing remarks, but we talked about potential, like the dilemma between whether you need a more formal push or whether it needs to be more like if you provide the enabling space of flexible funding and trust building and risk sharing, does it happen naturally? So maybe that's a question that we can continue reflecting on also in the Dutch Relief Alliance.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, and then we come to our closing. We will run out a few minutes. My sincere apologies for that. Hope you can stay a few minutes longer. This session was organized by Kuno and by the Dutch Relief Alliance, and therefore I want to hand over some for the closing remarks to both institutions. So first, the Dutch Relief Alliance, Anton, as crisis coordinator, could you share some final remarks, notes on how the DRA looks at community preparedness? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Britt. Yeah, maybe first, thank you all for the ability to participate. It's been very interesting, and I think what we also saw already in Jaap's summary, the difference in perception between the community and at the one hand and INGOs and the government at the other hand, I think that was quite insightful. And then also Jaap's remark that often the networks organized on these topics are moving beyond preparedness, but also on other topics. And I think that was really reflected also when Grace and Minette came in, showing actually what the community is already doing, the diversity of actions, Grace example, but also where Minette also really showed how the conversation moved beyond preparedness, and so also linking it to human rights, and then in the end asking the more political questions that are also actually there. Why are people that are vulnerable kept so poor? We are in the same storm. Why are we not all in the same boat? So I think that has also been very inspiring. And I think for people in the community, the reality is one, whereas from a donor perspective, sometimes we are a little bit split into silos, right? So the question we have to ask ourselves as Dutch Relief Alliance when it comes to preparedness and disaster risk reduction, it's also a question of, okay, how does our donor look at spending money not for humanitarian response, but for anticipatory action? And luckily, we have a very flexible donor. So when I look at the DRA, indeed, I think what helps is we have a very long-term presence in protected crisis joint responses, which allows us also to build trust and long-term relations with community-based organizations, and also to have that conversation with local actors, but also with communities on trust and risks. We also have rather flexible funding, because when I was having this conversation with someone from the ministry during my visit to Yemen recently, can we spend money like this? Then the response was, okay, there's acute humanitarian needs, maybe even future humanitarian needs, and if we give a sustainable response to that, then that's fine, but the link needs to be there to humanitarian needs. So what I think is, as Dutch Relief Alliance, we are currently thinking about a strategy for after 2026. I think this is this meeting has been a very nice input to that conversation, and together we will need to look at what modalities can we use. For example, group cash transfers are already being used in some context in our programming, but also how do we want to experiment with this? And as Eleni said, should it really be formally pushed, or are we actually already, if we have the right voices on the table, naturally making this transition? So thanks a lot, and giving back to you, Britt.
Thank you so much, Anton. Yes, Corinne, some final closing remarks from Kuno.
Well, there is not much to add. I think that Anton did a great sum up of some of the key findings. I think that from our side, it was really a pleasure to organize this together with the Dutch Relief Alliance. It was just a joy to see so much participation from across so many different places and spaces. So much appreciated, and thanks so much to everyone that was part of the organization, but also that took part today in very engaged conversations. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Two final notes before we close. For the note takers of the breakout groups, could you either share your notes in this chat, or could you send it to the same email address that you signed up with for this session? So maybe Marielle or Julia, could you include that email address in the notes for everyone? In the comment box. Yes, there it is. Thank you so much. So please share your notes, then we can take it in our final reports. And we will share out a survey. So please fill it in. It's about how did you experience this session today? And what do you like? Also, what do you like to learn more about for any potential future sessions? Thank you so much to the Dutch Relief Alliance and to Kuno for this for allowing us to have this session together. It was my pleasure to be a moderator.
So we hope that we will have more conversation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for this session. So maybe Marielle or Julia, could you include that email address in the notes for everyone? In the comment box. Yes, there it is. Thank you so much. So please share your notes, then we can take it in our final reports. And we will share out a survey. So please fill it in. It's about how did you experience this session today? And what do you like? Also, what do you like to learn more about for any potential future sessions? Thank you so much to the Dutch Relief Alliance and to Kuno for this for allowing us to have this session together. It was my pleasure to be a moderator today. Thank you so much for the speakers. Thank you so much for your participation, and I hope to see you all soon in another one. And stay safe, everyone. Take care, and have a great remainder of the day.